Hey and welcome to my channel. In today's video I thought I'd talk a little bit what are the characteristics of a Swedish person. And this is obviously quite personal. It's from an observation in the last 2 years since I moved here to Sweden. I just thought it could be quite fun to analyze, okay, maybe not analyze, but just like think of what makes a Swede a Swede. So let's get started immediately. So one thing I noticed is that Swedes are quite respectful, and that shows really in many ways. They respect the environment, the personal space and the community they live in. So sometimes Swedes can come across a little bit distant or cold or not that approachable, but I think a lot of this kind of characteristic comes from having a lot of respect for other people. And one example actually is recently, like I met with a parent at the playground. Well, we accidentally met and our children were playing for quite a long time. And then my older daughter came to me and asked me if we can go home because she was tired. So I basically just said to the parent that we are going home now because she's tired, and immediately he kind of said, oh, he hopes that he didn't intrude. And I was quite like, oh my god, no, not at all. It was really lovely, to catching up, to talk about things, anything really. We talked about a lot of things. It was really fun whilst our children were playing. But yeah, me saying, oh, we're going now, seemed like, or maybe he said something wrong or was too much or whatever. I don't know his thought process, but I just thought like it was very interesting how he reacted, and it kind of showed again this respect he had for my personal space and what I thought, and he didn't really want it to be too much, basically. And then another thing I would say Swedes are, they like to follow rules, but, and let me explain a little bit. I think when there are rules and they make sense, kind of common sense rules, Swedes are very happy to follow these rules because it has benefits, benefits maybe for themselves, but also for the community. If it suits, a lot of people and has advantages for a lot of people, then it makes sense, and then they like to follow the rules. I think it also has to do with respect, especially when it is known that following the rules benefits a lot of people, then they respectfully follow these rules. Of course, sometimes it can be a little bit too far. There's one example which, where it is good to follow the laws, but if you don't think outside of the box or about the consequences, the laws are the laws and you have to follow the laws. That's basically the idea behind it. But when it comes to burning a religious book, and you know what I'm talking about, and I don't want to go into too much detail here, but I find that as an interesting example where there's freedom of speech, which is a law, and you really want to follow it, and you don't really think about, the consequences of what does it really mean, and is it even right, and you still follow the rules, although the decision made is by really a minority. Anyways, I don't want to go too much into it, but it can sometimes also backfire. That's what I want to say, that when you follow the rules all the time, it can backfire. But at the beginning I said there's also a but, because as much as Swedes like to follow rules, I think there is like a limit sometimes, where if it doesn't has common sense, or maybe it doesn't benefit actually a lot of people, then I think Swedes do kind of rebel. I mean, not massively, but kind of cry out loud, and say something. And to give you an example, like a school near us was about to close. It was a kind of political decision, and it didn't benefit, in the first steps a lot of people. It kind of seemed to benefit more like either the politicians or maybe the communities. Like, definitely was also a money thing. And then, parents stood up and kind of, I don't want to say demonstrated, but like a mini demonstration and stuff like that. So it shows that Swedes don't only take everything as it is presented to them, kind of following the rules. It really depends. So what I've observed is if it makes common sense, if it benefits a lot of people, if it benefits like the weak, for example, then yes, they're more likely to follow the rules and it's all fine. But if there's an agenda behind it, or if it doesn't benefit a lot of people, or if it's not common sense kind of thing, like there is a bit of a rebellion behind every Swede. Okay, when I say every Swede, obviously there's always exceptions, but this is what I observed, and I feel like that's a bit of the character of a Swede as well. And another thing I observed is that Swedes like to help and give advice. They don't do it without asking, so they wouldn't just randomly come up to you and give you advice. I think it's more in the context, thinking more about, about my neighbors, and my partner recently painted fence on our terrace, and he actually had a few conversations with like people who passed by. Some of them were our neighbors, and then they give some tips and advice and stuff like that. So I feel Swedes have something to say. They like to share their knowledge, but they wouldn't force it onto you, if that makes sense. So this is something I observed, and there is very supportive nature in them as well. Like, I like to observe the little things sometimes, and I noticed when I was taking the bus a few times, like, people let me get off first. Like, they would wait and let me off. And that was women and men. And I think that's kind, so it's just a little act of kindness. It might be insignificant, but it just shows a little bit the character of people. And I've come across it a few times now, and my perception is really that there is some, really good kind of kindness rooted in Swedes. Like, they like to help, they like to support, they like to give advice where advice is appreciated. One thing I also now discovered in maybe the 2 years, but also maybe beyond the 2 years, because I have some Swedish friends, but when you make friends with Swedes, it might be quite hard to start a friendship, because Swedes are quite reserved, they're quite careful, respectful. But once you made friends with a Swede, they're really friends for life. They really care about you, they are there for you. Like, it is nice to have a Swedish friend. And this is something, maybe it is a bit different in other countries where maybe it's quite easy to make friends, and you meet up and whatever. But I think there are different levels of friendships. There's just the socializing part of it, chatting to people, maybe occasionally meeting up with people. And then there is a lot of layers in between. But then there's also like deep friendships. Like, if you need anything, if you need help, can you rely on your friends? And I feel the Swedes, once they are your friend, they are very supportive of you, go through with you like ups and downs. They just don't disappear when you maybe have a bad time, or they're just there for you, and they appreciate you, and they count you as their friend, and you are their friend. You're not going to be thrown away the next day if something went wrong. So I will observe it more. Hopefully I will make some, new friendships, like proper new friendships with Swedes, to kind of observe like the beginning of a friendship, and further into a friendship. And last but not least, I feel Swedes are effortlessly stylish. Yes, maybe not every Swede, of course, but just in general, like, I just love that Swedes look really stylish, but it looks like it just happened to them. It's like, oh, yeah, I just dressed myself today and I look like this and I look gorgeous. I really like that. With Swedes, like the style, I am not there yet. I'm learning, observing, and I hope one day, when I have also a bit more time, that I can just style myself effortlessly stylish and be a bit more a Swede, because I really admire that, that the style looks cool, but comfortable, and not thought through, but they are just this way. I'm stuttering because it's really hard to kind of describe it, but I just love that, you walk around and people just like look cool and gorgeous, and that's just who they are, and that's how they do it, and that it doesn't look like they're trying hard, basically. So I really like that with Swedes, and maybe it's not everyone, of course, but just overall when you look around, and maybe it's also more a city thing, I don't know, but I really like the Swedish style. People dress themselves, and you know, there's summer styles and obviously winter styles, and I think Swedes nailed it. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want to add anything. Let me know in the comments down below. And well, hopefully I see you in my next video. Until then, have a great day and stay safe. Hey do!